Thank you. Senator Inhofe.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me apologize to the committee here. I've been chairing the Armed Services Committee, and I fear that what I'm going to ask has already been covered, but it hasn't been covered to me yet. So if there's a little redundancy here, I do apologize for that. On the Farm Act, and I'm a co-sponsor of that, it exempts the registered pesticide products and air emissions from animal waste from reporting requirements. In December, the EPA published a final rule to exempt all farms from reporting these, and the rule was struck down in last April by the U.S. Court of Appeals, the D.C. Circuit. This would be to Mr. Mortensen. In your testimony, you say that the biggest challenges in your industry are urban encroachment, natural disasters, and government overreach. I know a bit about that, the lengths of government, what they can do, and control every aspect of American life. I spent a number of years chairing this committee, and we lived through that. I find it interesting that the last administration agreed that these reporting requirements weren't needed or wanted by agencies tasked with responding to emergency situations. Yet the environmentalists sued, and you have to wonder why, as you stated in your written testimony. There's no environmental benefit, but it seems there is a lot of very specific information that is required in reporting these emissions. So I would ask you, is there concern among your community, the farmers and ranchers, about how this information could be used if wrong, to someone's disadvantage if it were in the wrong hands?
Thank you for the question, Senator Inhofe. Yes, there is. I mean, you know, we're quite proud of our environmental record, not only on the ranch, but as a state. We've done a very good job of keeping the water.
That's interesting you'd say that, start off with that, because that's so obvious. And you know, the ones who are really concerned are the ones who own the land, and yet there is this idea that government has to come in and tell you how to make your land look right and perform right. But go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I'd like to mention, our ranch was one of 4 that was featured in a Smithsonian exhibit called Legacy of the Land, and it ran for 6 months. And then it was taken by the Library Association throughout the country on a 4-year tour. Oh, okay. So, you know, we're trying to do the right thing, you know, by the environment. It's very important to us. We make our living off it. So the problem I see coming is that there is not a whole lot of, people don't know that this thing is coming. A lot of them are unaware of it. And on May 1st, it's going to hit the fan. You know, the manure is literally going to hit the fan because they then have, you know, 30 days to report. And where's the information? Where do I get information on pasture-based livestock to make any kind of judgment on how much ammonia or hydrogen sulfide my cattle are producing? And how does that change over the seasons? You know, like I talked about the dung beetle earlier. They're burying that cow pat within an hour of it hitting the ground. In the wintertime, obviously they're not. But, you know, there is so much science that's lacking here that there's no way I can make an accurate report. And you get junk in, you get junk out. So it's...
Yeah. You know, I'm very familiar with your area. I've spent some time with the chairman there, and there's a lot of beauty there, and I was not aware that you were singled out and honored in such a way, and I'm very proud of you. Mr. Satterfield, your testimony addresses the fact that information that would be reported is viewed by the EPA as essentially useless. I know the Coast Guard shares this view. Yet your industry and the rest of the ag community will be charged with reporting these largely unknown and low-level emissions. Is there concern among the industries as to the ability or inability to report this information accurately and the potential legal liability that they'd be exposed to if they don't?
The method does not exist to give chicken growers the formula on how to measure emissions from their houses.
Yeah.
EPA, as I mentioned to Senator Markey, put on its website, it's in the process of trying to figure this out again. There was an effort a dozen years ago or more, millions of dollars spent to try to figure this out, and it couldn't be figured out. So EPA, according to its website of a few months ago, is going to try again. And then and only then will the growers, the chicken growers, the family farmers, have the tools they need to figure out what their emissions are.
Yeah.
And one of the concerns we have is that a lower threshold is to be reported based on the EPA current guidance, an upper threshold, and then a yearly total. Well, the activists often take the numbers that best suit their purpose, which would be the upper threshold, and say, that's it for every chicken house for 365 days a year. We have a huge problem out there. When in fact, when a little itty bitty chick and a house of them, 25 to 30,000 birds, is not producing the upper threshold, which is at the maximum time coming out of the houses. And there's times between flocks, there's no ammonia being sent out of the houses. So that's a concern that the numbers are going to be turned by the critics of the animal agricultural industry to suit their purpose.
And they seem to be in charge, too, quite often. Let me just end on a positive note. Mr. Mortensen, you're probably familiar with the partnership program. We did this program, it was back during the Obama administration, and they came out and they inspected at our request. In fact, I made this a requirement to get confirmation that they make at least 2 trips to my state of Oklahoma and really spend some time on the farms and the ranches. And they came out with the conclusion that they are the ones who are are really concerned about their own land, about the environment, and I thought that was a great discovery because that kind of broke the ice for the first time in my memory that government doesn't know as much about your land as you do.
Absolutely. We hosted the regional.
Was that Fish and Wildlife that you hosted?
No, it was the EPA administrator out of Denver, and I can't remember what her name is. Very fine lady. But we gave her a tour of the ranch, and she was really taken aback by what is going on the land and the care that we, not only give the livestock, but the land and the water and, our concern for the health of it all, how it all works together as a system. And if part of it isn't healthy, none of it's healthy.
Good.
So it's very important to us. And I speak for myself, and I think the industry as a whole, that the environmentalist part of it is the most important part. We're trying to do the right thing, and I believe we are.
I believe you are too. Mr. Chairman, pardon the interruption, Senator Booker. Thank you for your tolerance.